Let's bring in Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. You heard.
Good morning.
Yeah, you heard. So definitively, tell us what's what. What about the payroll tax holiday? Is it in there? Will it stay in? And what are its chances?
I believe it'll stay in as one of the elements of what we need to do. There's a large part of what we need, liability protection. We need people going back to work. So is the bonus to work that we look at? We know a lot of people are unemployed. How do we continue to deal with that? We look at not the question if, but how do we go back to school? So we want to make sure it's safe for the students and for the teachers. And that's what we're looking at, the funding to be able to move forward in those areas as well. Are there tax incentives that help individuals be able to survive? We're looking also, we have a lot of positives sitting out there. We have money already appropriated, more than $100 billion for states. Can we change that and make it more flexible that the states can use it for other items? Can we use more? We have about $100 billion left in the PPP program that was so successful. And we're watching other states begin to have to shut down again. So can we assist in those small businesses as well? This is just part of the process, so there's going to be debate. It's healthy debate. It's people having different ideas, and then make the very best ideas going into the bill that will become a law.
I would say, what does the GOP want? But the GOP, we can see that there's some divergence from what some people in Congress want, what the administration want. But what do you think the bargaining chips are on both sides, Leader McCarthy? What does the GOP want the most, and what are you going to have to give to the Democrats for them to give you what you want the most? Is that how it works? Does it ever happen that way down there?
Well, there's a process the way government's designed. You got a House, you got a Senate. Both will debate and move forward. The challenge will be, does the Democrats even want to have a bill? We've watched even to something that the nation united around police reform, that the Democrats in the Senate stopped it simply because they have this rule in the Senate that they need to go up just to debate the bill. They denied the right to even debate the bill, even though they were offered 20 amendments. In the House, we don't have something like that. We know what the Democrats passed in the House, more than $3 trillion, but much of that, and one example is, they talk about cannabis more than they talk about jobs in that bill. A lot of that were things that all they wanted prior to COVID even existing, election reform and others. So I don't think that will survive inside any bill. The real focus will be what helps this nation to be sure that we're safer, what helps the nation get back to work, what helps our students within schools, and what helps not only just the schools but small businesses with liability protection to be able to move forward. I think in that limited scope, we can find the things that you Republicans and Democrats can unite around that really would be what America is asking for.
So you get the liability protection from Democrats. You don't think that's going to be the
well, I don't know. Now, remember, it is not an easy thing for Democrats. The Democrats denied us liability reform when it came to masks. In our very first bill, 3M could have provided us millions of more masks, but the Democrats wouldn't go forward because the trial lawyers had a problem with it. So it wasn't until our second COVID bill were we able to get them there. And so we had a problem getting enough masks there. We've watched Nancy Pelosi time and again hold up when we were going for small business PPP. She held up our CARES bill. She held up the renewing of funding for it. So I envision that this bill doesn't get done by the end of July. I envision that same process happens probably with the Speaker holding it up, trying to get something else into the bill. We'll probably in the first week of August before we make this happen.
Andrew.
Leader, can you just, because I think it's worth the audience understanding it, what you just said about the 3M, the masking issue, related to liability, because I get lots of people emailing about liability protection saying, why do we need any more liability protection? If you get a flu, a company isn't responsible for liability in that case. Can you sort of just walk the audience through it?
I'll walk the audience directly through it. There are already more than 1,000 lawsuits between school districts, businesses, and others claiming that you got COVID there, even though we cannot prove where COVID came from if an individual was able to get it from a place. So you have a number of small businesses saying, here I am in a challenge, I'm not going to open back up. You have school districts saying, I'm not going to open back up because of the fear that I'm going to be sued for this. So why don't we give a protection to businesses, to schools, and others going forward. Let's go to 2019 on up to 2024 so we can move forward with this. I think it's critical for the economy, but more importantly for our education system, that they're not bogged down with thousands of trial lawyers just finding a way to bring suit against them, thinking that this is a place that they would capture money. And what happened with 3M, that was a very good question.
Yep, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, in 3M makes different types of masks. One was just for surgical, but one could protect you not in surgery, but they were afraid to sell it, to be able to give it out into the public because they were getting threats with lawsuits. The Democrats would not allow them to move forward to give them that protection, even though they're very good masks. It took us not till the second bill till the Democrats would actually release that. So that's when I talk about liability protection. I think across the board it's a no-brainer that people would want it, but the trial lawyers have a very good foothold inside the Democrats, inside Capitol Hill. So that's why this is even having to be discussed as a place to put it in.
Leader, would you ever consider tying money that's going to go to states to their ability or willingness to comply with CDC rules or at least guidelines? Because one of the things we don't want to have happen here is to throw good money after bad. And there's an issue here where some people are saying we're involved in financial socialism on one end that's effectively subsidizing people's personal freedom, if you will, on the other, not to comply with the rules.
Well, I think states should comply with CDC rules. And remember, their recommendations most of the times going forward. And I find that most are doing that, but not every state is exactly the same. I'm watching in California, it's 4 states in one. So one size doesn't fit all. Same thing when it comes to schools when I was listening to an earlier guest from Harvard. The question should not be if, it should be how are we going to open these schools. We want to make sure it's safe for the parent, for the student, for the teacher, but we also want to make sure the parent has a discussion in this as well. And that's why I believe CDC lets out guidelines, and it's a scope of how to perform as going forward, but it's not the same for every place in the country. And remember, the difference that we have learned throughout this. I remember being in the Situation Room in February and Dr. Fauci telling me that you shouldn't wear a mask at that time, with Dr. Fauci saying it would probably go away in the summertime. The Chinese government, the communist government lied to us, and they lied to the world. And this is why the ingenuity of America is going to solve this. One of the biggest challenges we have such promising vaccines and therapeutics. I mean, people are going to write books about the investments that we made and how we're going to do this earlier than anybody else. But now we have hackers from Russia, from China, and others coming in and trying to hack these companies. That's actually going to slow the process down. That's why I introduced a new bill that actually puts sanctions on those individuals if they are trying to hack it. Why wouldn't they want to work with us to solve a problem they created?
So, Leader, early on, you might recall it was when we wanted almost to help everyone in terms of corporate America. It's like we're not going to question whether it's going in the right places, and this is a COVID. It's they couldn't have been foreseen, so let's just throw everything at it. So at this point, if you were watching earlier, if you saw the Harvard interview, then you also saw Kevin O'Leary. He's worried at this point that the new economy that comes out of this, a lot of the old companies just aren't suited for the way business is going to be done, and we're just propping up zombie companies by just throwing so much at the problem. And there's a lot of Republicans that are worried about the size of what we're spending right now. So is there something to that? Do we need to be more discerning about who gets money through this, so we don't prop up companies that shouldn't be surviving anyway?
Well, I think we should be concerned about our debt. And I think we should be surgical on what we spend our money on. It should only be things that should really have a need and care. When we first did our bills, it wasn't about companies, it was about employees. Government was telling you to shut down. So it wasn't something that the company has done. It wasn't a financial crisis. So I thought we had a responsibility to put that capital bridge going forward. But in going through COVID, something has also changed. Telemedicine will never go away again. There are things when it comes to how we purchase over the internet, things that we do. We have sped up this economy to where the future probably would have looked 10 years from now. Now, are those companies able to keep up? What we were looking at, the money we were providing, wasn't to the company, it was to the employee, to keep paying the employee's salary, because it's better for those individuals to keep working. And that's what this bill should focus on. How do we focus on safety?
Right.
How do we focus on getting people back to work? That should be the foundation and the battleground that we have this debate over.
Right. Hey, Leader, I just want to ask you one question to go back to your comment about Dr. Fauci. And I know that there's a lot of people in the administration who are trying to knock Fauci. But just help us with this.
I'm not knocking Dr. Fauci at all.
Well, no, but you were making the example that you're using the example that he said no masks at one point and then changed. But here's the thing that I'd ask you. It's clear as day, I think, that at the time that was either the science that was being suggested, maybe it was wrong science, but that that I think he's been trying to be genuine about this throughout. At the same time, when I think it's pretty clear that the president and other governors around this country have not followed the CDC guidelines, have actually openly flouted the science. And so, unless you're suggesting that Dr. Fauci was disingenuous at the time that he made those statements, which may have been wrong, okay. So what are you saying?
Okay, let me clarify, because I probably could have stated that better, or maybe you didn't understand correctly. What I was referring to is the communist country of China lying to this country. Had they opened up, we would have known more about it. The point I was trying to make is every day we learn something new about COVID. At the beginning, we were very concerned that it would last on plates and others, but now we're finding it's more airborne. That's why masks are very important right now, the droplets, because every day we learn something new in this process. It's more of a blood disease as we're going forward. We find better treatment for it. And the point I was making, because I have such high respect for Dr. Fauci, it was Dr. Fauci because the information he was not being given by China, and the best information that he knew at the time, because I have such high respect for him, this is why I'm using it. Even he did not think at that moment in time. But that is so different from today. So I don't think people should jump to such conclusions when people talk about it. It's more of an example of showing that we're learning more every day. And if we would spend a little moment talking about what has happened to these therapeutics and these vaccines, it is so promising out there what's happening today. And it's so smart what government has done on this warp speed that we're making 100 million dosage for every single one of those vaccines that are going. So if we are successful in a few short months, we can provide it to the entire country and go into the world. But now we have other countries that are trying to hack in to slow the process. Just as we watched that China would utilize PPE for their own personal gain into other countries, where here we are as America, the beauty of our nation as a whole, not only to solve this virus, but to actually share it with the rest of the world, to have people trying to hack us, that is what is wrong.
Leader McCarthy, it seems that the chasm between Democrats and Republicans in passing a stimulus seems pretty wide at this point in time. How confident are you that it'll actually get done? And if it doesn't get done, would you be in favor of congressional leaders, of members of Congress taking a pay cut or withholding their pay until a stimulus bill is passed?
Well, I think, first of all, the first thing members of Congress should have to do is actually come to work. If you watched, we had a committee meeting last week where a Democrat was on a boat on the internet calling in his vote. You don't have to, if you're a Democrat, you don't have to come to Congress. You mail in your vote. It's shadow voting, and you still get paid. What is the incentive? I think it is essential that we should be here working on this. And I believe we have to get this done. I think this will be harder than the other COVID bills that we have passed before, because we're getting closer to an election. Just as I stated earlier, I watched the Democrats take a challenge that the entire nation was looking for, some police reform, and wouldn't even allow a bill by Tim Scott to come up for debate. If that is the case, if we end up where the Senate will not even allow a bill to come up because the minority will deny it from being debated, the answer is that's pure politics. It's pure politics. And yes, people should be punished for playing politics with people's safety and people's health.
Minority Leader.
Votes aside, though, Leader, back to the question: would you take a pay cut or forgo your pay until the stimulus is passed?
I think any member that does not show up for work should take a pay cut. I don't think you should be paid for not working. I don't believe that's the American way. I don't believe anybody in the private sector gets paid for not showing up to work. That's why Congress is essential. Congress should work, but if you are a Democrat in Congress today, you get paid and you don't have to come to work.
All right, very good. Thanks for all your time this morning, Minority Leader McCarthy. We appreciate it. It's a nice shot.
Thank you very much.
Beautiful day.